Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw. Played 11 seasons with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week, talk all things hockey and all kinds of variety of other subjects. And Tom, let's talk about, since we met last, JT Miller. And it's interesting because, there was a lot of discussion. Well, the Canucks, they cannot fit everyone under their cap. They've got a lot of talented players, but guess what? They found room for JT Miller at $8 million per year. I seem to sense. I'm not sure of this, but I think this was a little bit front loaded, where you give the player a little bit more in the beginning, and then you lower it to sort of get the AAV down to where you need it. But then, there's always. Players like getting that big boost.
Give it to me now. Give it to me now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's always a nice way to sort of get things done. That's really what delivered for Philip Forsberg in Nashville, because he wanted to be paid like Roman Josi. They really didn't want to go that way. They didn't want to have two players up in there and with the salary cap. So in the end, the Predators gave in and said, "Look, we'll give you 3 years at $10 million, so you'll be a $10 million player for 3 years. But then we're going to lower that so that the average fits in what we're trying to accomplish."
Another kudos for Jimmy Rutherford. I know he's not the general manager. Typically, it's the general manager that's doing the deals, but I'm sure he had his hand in getting that done, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, to me, that's where a director of hockey operations or a president. That's where they're most involved.
Yeah.
Because he's got to have his fingers in the pie with regard to how the cap's going to work, because he answers to ownership on that. So and I like this Vancouver team. We liked it a couple of years ago. I just like the skill level. You look around and there's a lot of guys that can dangle. There's a lot of guys with some magic. There's a lot of guys with some grit too. They still, Horvat is their next guy that they've got to get signed. So, they had Brock Besser and he's signed, and they thought they may not be able to afford him. JT Miller, they wouldn't be able to afford him. He's signed. Now Horvat, and it's interesting because we talked about this before, and I thought he was the last guy on my list for the guys that they had to get signed. Like, I felt like they should try to keep the guys who are a little bit more skilled, but you really liked Horvat, and I remember you saying you really thought that he was going to be a priority, and I think he is a priority. I just don't think he was first on their list.
Yeah, I just real quick. Barry Shelley brought up a point here. On Saturday, I was lucky. I was representing the Rangers. Went over to Kings Park in Long Island, and they had a charity event there for Silent Night, I think it's called. It's a great charity. His family runs it. They help out families in need and everything. And I was there for a couple hours and realized they had a dunk tank. So, of course, I had to get the dunk tank and antagonize the kids. I was yelling at the kids, "Come on, you got more than that. You got more than that." So they got me.
Yeah. How many times did you get dunked?
Twice. Went in twice. Yeah.
Twice? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was good. It was blast. It was good.
Yeah. It was only kids throwing at you, or?
Yeah, they had the kids. Yeah, and I'm yelling at them. I told them, I said, "Listen, let's do it." They got another one event planned during the winter. So I said, "Okay, let's do it during the winter. We'll raise lots of money. We'll promote it and let them know I'm going to go get dunked on in the winter."
Yeah, that could be cold. Yeah, for sure.
We take cold showers now. So we had our whole summer dealing with no air conditioning. So,
yeah, you're not. I've been telling people about that. The Tom Laidlaw going. And like your True Grit, the reaction on that goes, "Wow, that is really cool." And I tell people about you and the air conditioner, they were going, "Knucklehead." Yeah, what do you do?
They don't get the logic, right? So here's the logic.
Yeah.
Well, so the logic is that you're going to make mistakes. You're not perfect in life. Life is not fair, so things are going to happen to you along the way. Good, bad things are going to happen. So it's getting up as quickly as possible and dealing with the bad things happening to you. So you get yourself out of your comfort zone more times, and now you're used to being out of your comfort zone more often. So clearly, we're out of the comfort zone.
You explained to me before, and I have sort of passed that along, but people don't get that. I think a lot of people admire you for your, getting up at 3:30 and the discipline that you have and working out. But depriving yourself of something that we worry about older people who let their body temperatures get up. So to me, that isn't you're not setting a good example when you're doing that. So,
well, you got to figure. My parents lived their whole lives without air conditioning. I didn't have air conditioning growing up in the farm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a big thing now, but now we do tend to worry about those things.
Or do you think we just get talked into thinking that we need to worry about it?
No, I mean, as you do get older, I think you do feel the heat a little bit more. I don't, maybe, you're in such good physical condition that, you probably don't feel it the way that a normal person does. But I think, most people are concerned about, their relatives who are, in their 70s.
That's true. I hear you. Yeah, you're right there. People maybe their conditioning is not good. Yep, you're right.
Yeah. So, and the other one too is that driving. Your car gets hot.
We have the windows open. Although I had one time.
Yeah.
At one time where I had to take a call and they couldn't hear me. I had the car. The phone was going through the speakers in the car.
Yeah.
So I had to put the windows up there. That was totally.
Yeah, and I do sort of relate to that because I have a Honda that I drive that's 17 years old, and it's got 1 million miles on it, but it just runs so well that we haven't replaced it. There's really no reason to.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the air conditioning went out, and they don't even make parts for that anymore. So I either have to put a brand new air conditioner or find someone who will take a junkyard air conditioning and put it in, and I just haven't worked that hard. So I don't drive enough. Like, I wouldn't take that on a long trip. I would take a real car, but I use it and drive in the summer with it, and I just as you, I roll down the windows. But some days it really has been difficult, and a lot of times it's the issue that you brought up comes up for me where I'm just trying to talk at home, and you got the windows down and you can't, so you roll them up, and then it just is so incredibly hot. You're just so, but I'm doing right there. Yeah. So I should break down, but the cost of a new air conditioner is for a car, an older car is really high. So I just can't bring myself to do that. So,
well, the next test will be the dunk tank in the middle of the winter. See how tough I am.
Yeah. But that, again, I think that's just a little bit different. Like, that's, one time dunk. And, it's like the people that run out and I think it's, isn't New Year's Day when Chicago, when the Polar Bear Club goes and run like that? That's a fun thing.
Actually, they say the cold water thing is very healthy for you. There's a doctor, I can't remember his name, that studies it all, and it's like the health benefits. Really good. Yeah.
But I do think that there's, there will be a few that will continue on their admiration for you on your endeavor. But I do think on that particular one, people see a knucklehead factor there that they can't.
They just don't understand. They just don't understand, Kevin.
Well, I mean, I think they appreciate your logic. I just don't think they're buying it. So
gotta get out of that comfort zone. Gotta get out of the comfort zone. That's how you grow.
Yeah. Isn't there another way to do it, Tom? To get out of your comfort zone?
There's other ways.
Yeah. So anyway, were you done with JT Miller? You said all you were going to say about him?
No, I guess the big thing for me was just like you were covering it, that Jimmy Rutherford, really, and listen, I'm not picking on other general managers, but he has really shown, like as he did in Pittsburgh, he finds a way to get it done, right? Everybody else is thinking you can't get it done. There's no way. He's one of those guys, Lou Lamoriello's like that, other GMs as well, but they find a way to get it done. And
and I think, with Vancouver being on the West Coast, you got to stay up to watch their games. So I think, just a person that really likes the NHL and watches a lot of different games, they probably see fewer of those Vancouver games as well. So a lot of people, I think, were kind of stunned when they started to read that JT Miller had, almost 100 points last year.
Yeah.
He's always been a good player.
Yeah, he's big. He's nasty. Got a nasty streak to him. Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah, I do too. And he's got to be there. What people always say about these kind of contracts, because he'll be 37 or 38, I think maybe 38, at least 37 anyway, at the end of this contract. And people always say, well, imagine what kind of player he's going to be. Is he going to be an $8 million player? And, what I say to that is, but everybody gets those extra years like that. And you're just paying in advance. Like, you're really paying you're paying 8 years at 8 million, 64 million. And really what you're paying for is you're probably paying him $10 million a year for the first, 4 years, 40 million, and then 24 for the last. I mean, that isn't how it works out, but not even close. But what I'm saying is that you're just looking at the 64 million and the $8 million average, but you kind of accept the fact that, in order to get him signed, you had to sort of do this.
Yeah. Again, I know you know this, but 7 years, 56 million, right?
Well, yeah. 7. Yeah, I keep forgetting.
And you're right. In the old days, it used to be when you signed a contract, usually a player like that could leave someplace, so they give him a signing bonus, and that signing bonus was meant as an inducement to enter into the contract. Now the signing bonus is more meant as a way to structure it so that you avoid a lot of taxes and everything. So things have changed that way. But you're right. Ultimately, you're overpaying him, or maybe you're paying him too long. You have to do that and to induce him to sign that contract.
Yeah. And, his real value is the now. And, maybe you can argue that the $8 million cap hit, might be worth more. If he's going to score almost 100 points, he's certainly, worth more. But anyway, I think the Canucks are thrilled. And I think the fan base there, given that they had all those players that needed to be signed, and they've got all of them but Horvat signed, I think they're feeling pretty good about all that. So
that Pettersson, is it Pettersson or Peterson? Is it which way?
It's Elliot Peterson. Yeah.
Well, he's good too. He had an off year last year, but I remember a couple years ago, man, he reminded me a lot of Wayne Gretzky.
But yeah, he's a very, very skilled, player. They've got a lot going on. Like I think there's going to be a lot of people picking them to get in the postseason.
Here's an interesting comment here from our boy Jay Lewis. I watched a lot of hockey. Rangers made a huge mistake trading. Well, yeah, you can look back and say that, but they got rid of him at a time when they were trying to go through the rebuild, and he had a lot of value to him. So I can't remember what they got for him, but they've got a lot back for him. So I hear why you would say that wow, he's so great. Why isn't he on the Rangers anymore? But that's part of a rebuild, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I mean, I think it's fair to say that they didn't value him as much as they probably should.
Right. But was he the same? Was he the same player that he back then when he was with the Rangers? He's not the same player. Yeah.
No. So I'm trying to think because JT Miller. What was the trade? So it was.
Oh, that's right. He went with the McDonough to Tampa, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm trying to see that trade. Yeah, then they traded him. So the Lightning trade.
So Jay, you're making another comment. He was young enough to keep him for the rebuild. That's what Jay Lewis says again. And I hear you're right. But again, like Kevin and I are saying now, when he was playing with the Rangers, he wasn't the same player that he is now. He just wasn't as good. But listen, there's no question you'd love to see him on the Rangers right now, being the player he is. But again, that is part of hockey, man. You're trying to do a rebuild, you're making evaluations on players. Yeah. I had forgotten the trade. And I'm looking at it here, and it was really what turned out to be a really poor trade for the Rangers. Who'd they get?
Okay, I'm looking at it now here, but okay.
Oh, Selma and Brett.
Domesticano, yeah, was in that trade. So I want to make sure I got all the draft picks too, and they don't seem to do it. Okay. So it was McDonough and Miller went for Nemesnikov in the first round pick. Okay, so it was a first round pick, a second round pick, and Howden getting sent to New York, and he was anything. So it was essentially McDonough and Miller for Nemesnikov. Who's been like an average NHL player throughout his career, but it was the first round pick in 2018 and the second round in 2019, and then a couple of other guys who really didn't make a difference. So
I don't know if Tony's joking around here or not, but he says we got Selma Hayek.
Yeah. It was Lieber Hayek. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking.
Yeah, that's the joke he's making. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean that probably didn't turn out to be a great trade. I don't remember who the 2018 first round pick was. Yeah. Do you remember?
I do not. No, we look it up.
Okay, well, I mean, we should look that up. This is we got the capability.
We're thorough.
Yeah. So
So while you're looking that up, big news coming up. I'm putting up a green screen behind me this afternoon, so we'll be having a new background. I know everybody's been excited about that, waiting for that to happen.
Well, that was Kraftsek. It's Kravtsov. So I mean, depending on what they end up doing with him, maybe that trade can be a little bit better. So that was
See, that is the thing about trades too. Jay's bringing up another trade here. Nash for Ryan Lindgren. That was so that was a steal. But that's the thing with trades, especially when you're dealing with younger players, you just don't totally know for sure how those players are going to turn out, right? So that's the job of a general manager.
Well, it is. I had a discussion with, and I've known Ken Holland for 30 some years. So, and he was in Detroit, and I knew him well, and we would just have conversations. And at one point we were talking about, and he didn't really like this comment, but I was actually being sincere about it because it is true. Like when you're making a trade, you're just guessing.
Yeah.
Like there's no right or wrong answer. You're just making an educated guess. Now it's based on experience. Like by that time, the person pulling the trigger on the trade was a pretty knowledgeable hockey guy, but he's still guessing. You don't really know. I mean, there's no formula for whether a trade will work out and it won't. I mean, that's the way life often is you got to take your best guess whether this is the right move, for you. And, that's the.
And you somewhat have to, I mean, you got scouts and everybody advising you, but you somewhat have to follow your heart too until you tell yourself, and like, that's just thing.
You go around, if you way GMs often operate, not all, but some of them just make their decisions just based on their own gut feelings. But some of them have we'll call it a cabinet where they have 5 or 6 people within the organizations. They call, they sample everyone's opinion, and then they reach their conclusion based on the things they've heard or the explanations that people have for why they would do what they do.
If you're a general manager, I look at Steve Yzerman drafting Sider, right? Like everybody watched the documentary, everybody said, why'd you draft him? And other people said, don't draft him. But he followed his heart, right? He had his gut instinct of what the player was like.
Well, I think for the most part, and again, not always, but I've found that the first round usually belongs to the general manager. By that, I mean, he decides, this is the guy, that's where you make hay, is in that first round. That's where you find the stars. And so he, usually tries to get out, scout the players who are going to be available, where he's going to be. He does most of his analysis on that first round. And then starting in the second round, or if you got a real early second round pick, because sometimes guys who are rated in the first round fall there, maybe he might do that one. He turns the draft over to his scouting staff. So the GM, and that's for sure with Steve Yzerman. Steve Yzerman, owns the first round, and he's going to take the guy that he feels strongest about. Where I think, and probably because they've been picking so early in the second round, he's probably had a pretty major say on who they're taking with their first pick in the second round. But then he just turns it over to his staff, because they've scouted all the.
Yeah, and a lot of times, the scouts have a guy that maybe like in the 5th or 6th round that they just love, right? That's like, you've got to get this guy. You've got to get this guy. That's very often what happens. So they get into some battles fighting over that. How do you feel about Niels Lundqvist, another prospect requesting trade from the Rangers? Heedle never did this like Elias Anderson and other players from Europe have done in the past. What gives? I want to get Kevin's opinion on this too. I don't recall in the past, like way back when I played, there was as many guys requesting trades back then. I don't think
actually, I would say it's pretty similar, to be honest. It's not a lot percentage today, and it wasn't a lot back then. But you just have guys that you just look at his situation. He's looking in front of him, and that Rangers defense has a lot of good young defensemen,
right?
And he's probably going, where do I fit? Where do I fit? And he's got options in his mind. He can go back to Europe and play. So I'm sure, he's thinking, look, I got to get out of here and get an opportunity to play. So
And the agent plays a role in that too. Again, I don't know the relationship with all the players, but I know when I play, there is some pressure when you're the agent to not just negotiate good contracts with the players, but to make sure that they're in a place where they can play. And like you said, and can prosper and get better and better. And obviously they get better and better and they make more money. So I'm assuming his agent, I'm trying to think of how I would handle it, but yeah, I don't like having players ask for trades, especially when they're that young and just get started in their careers. But the flip side of that is that if he stays there, it kind of stunts his growth a little bit too, where he's not going to get the ice time that he would hope that he would get and get to be a better player. But you know, it's also the other thing where you say, okay, well, listen, if you want to play more, then you've got to become a better player. So put more into the game. Again, I don't know his work ethic or lack of it, but you can always do more to be a better player. And then if it gets to the point, if you really think that you have just given everything you've got to become that better player, and they're still not getting the ice time, then, and again, I guess how well it's done too. Like to me, I would rather have the player walk into the general manager's office and say, listen, Chris, I love it here. It's fantastic. I'm treated great, but I want to play. I want to play like I'm a top 4 defenseman. I'm just not getting that ice time. But again, now there's pressure on the agent for them to do that nowadays. And that's one of the things I ran into in the past. One of the reasons I left the agent business was I always believed that if a player had a problem with the coach, the general manager, whatever it is, he should walk into that coach's office or the general manager's office, close the door, vent how he's feeling, be a professional and adult about it. Then those coaches and general managers are going to respect that player much more. If the agent comes and has that conversation, it's almost like, okay, this guy doesn't have the courage to sit down with me man to man and talk about it. I think it's better that way. Nowadays, I think that's changed a lot because, again, it happened to me where other agents would come along to the player and say, well, why do you have to go in the office? Why isn't Laidlaw going in and doing it? And it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. I just felt it was better for the player to do it.
Well, let me just amplify that a little bit because what Tom's not telling you, he was a little bit unique as an agent is that he didn't always tell his clients what they wanted to hear, which is a difficult decision because you can sometimes lose them. Because a lot of times they just want to be told that everything that they're doing is right. And, Tom would tell them, I don't like how you're playing or you need to pick it up. But I do think Tom you got to look at it on a case to case basis because sometimes players are stuck and you can sense it, they can't move, they're going to have trouble moving up and they need to get elsewhere. And a lot of times players don't recognize the opportunity that's right there in front of their face. All they can see is they're not playing right now where they want to play. So it's kind of tricky. You got to kind of read the tea leaves a little bit in these situations.
Brian Berard was first overall pick in the draft. He got drafted by the Ottawa Senators, and Ottawa was a mess at that time. It was just they're a young organization. I felt some bad decisions being made, and he was only an 18-year-old player, so there's really no, he wanted to play in the NHL, obviously, but it wasn't going to hurt him to go back to junior for another year. So we requested a trade, but we tried to keep it quiet at the time to just say, listen, it's just not working out. We tried to be more like, okay, listen, let's work together. Obviously, being the first overall pick in the draft, it's embarrassing that the player doesn't want to play there for the organization. We understood that, but ultimately I'll never forget too. I can't remember who the general manager was. He kind of took over halfway through the situation. French guy, and I can't remember his name. Anyways, we were at the World Juniors, and he was sitting in the stands, and there's a whole bunch of people. And obviously they knew that I was representing Brian Berard, and that he was the general manager. And he starts wagging the finger in my face like, we're not going to trade Brian Berard. He's putting on a big show. And I was like, okay, they had to trade him. So they had to trade him. Because ultimately they would lose his rights after 2 years. That would have meant that Brian would have gone back to junior for 2 years, but they weren't going to let that happen. So yeah. So it is a little bit of a tricky situation and trying to make a kind of determination of what's best for the players. The one thing I can tell you, and I think Tom will verify this, I often hear from readers who think that your teammates are going to be mad at you for requesting a trade, and that's all baloney. Players understand completely that an individual player has to do what's best for him. They do not hold it against them if they ask for a trade or, because I've had readers say, I'm sure his teammates, he doesn't want to play for us, get rid of him. That's not how they look at it. No, that really isn't. They understand that this is a business and you have to sort of take care of number one because no one else is going to take care of you. You've got to take care of you. So, it's the same thing when a player gets traded. They think the rest of the team going to be upset that the player got traded.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, they've moved on from him. I mean, if they like the guy, they may mess with him. They want to keep in touch with him, feel bad for him, whatever. But they have to take care of their own jobs, just like you're saying now. Every player's got to be ready to play, and they can't be worried about what the other guys are doing.
Yeah. I mean, you're sorry to see your friend go.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a guy you eat lunch with on the road all the time, yeah, you're a little bit unhappy about that. But you move on. You know what this is like, and and it's the same thing. We've talked about this before, and when I tell people that. It really kind of shocks them because they all know that that players are nice guys, but like when you get injured,
totally,
people they don't want you around.
I'll get that question for you. It reminds me of one thing too, and it's funny you say that because I remember Scott Kleinendorf, we lost him too. I'm sorry to bring up his name, but he's passed away a few years ago now. And somebody else. So it was the time we were playing the playoff game, and Bob Nystrom gave me the forearm shiver, and I had to spend the night in the hospital. So Scott Kleinendorf, whoever the player was, took my car home and back up to our practice facility. So the next day, I got out of the hospital, and I guess I got a cab or something up to our practice facility. And they saw me walking in. They thought they're going to be able to drive my Jeep around all the time. They were more upset that they had to give the Jeep back. I remember looking at me. I said, "You got the keys to my car?" And they go, "Oh." It's like they can care less. I just spent the night in the hospital.
Yeah. What was the question that was up? It wasn't.
Yeah, Ira. Do you think teams ever shy away from drafting or trading for a player based on the age? This is Scott Boras. I have heard general managers say to me that they just totally dislike the agent, and that maybe a later round pick they'd stay away from him. But if it's a first overall pick in the draft, if it's a good enough player, they'll draft a player. They have to. They can't let their personal feelings get in the way.
Yeah, I'm aware of, but it was off the record, so I won't kind of discuss who it was. But I'm aware of a situation where a team just sort of said, we're just weary of dealing with this agent. The player to us is not valuable enough for us to go through all this aggravation. So they just felt it was better as long as they could get fair value, and they did on that player. But they did indeed move him because they were just sick of dealing with the agent on things, and they thought that he had undue influence on the player. So, and again, but as Tom's right, if it's a good enough player, they don't care who it is. He could be represented by anybody, and they would, still keep him. So
I have had friends of mine that have become general managers that have told me that they'll treat the player, but they just don't want to deal with the agent whatsoever. They just maybe have the assistant general manager deal with them. They like him so much.
That's exactly it doesn't happen very often, but I'm just saying, I covered the league 35 years, so of course I have run into instances of like that where I was aware that they just or the messy. Maybe you could even make a case it isn't exactly the agent, but it's the continual messiness of having to deal with the player and the agent and everything. That if the player's not good enough, they're not going to deal with it.
Yeah. So Ira brings up. I'm just thinking of this guy too. Ira, you and I are thinking alike. That's a scary thought. Claude Lemieux is getting a bad reputation, but apparently he's doing really well. He's got a lot of clients. In the National Hockey League now.
I've had some readers tell me that, but I have not heard that in the hockey world.
I don't. So, it may be his reputation from a player that's carried
from a player. But I believe he represents Moritz Seider.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what's interesting about him. As many of you, especially if you kind of know of the Detroit-Colorado rivalry, know that Darren McCarty and he had a famous set to over what Lemieux did to McCarty's line mate and good friend Chris Draper. And, he broke his jaw in several places with a check into the boards. And then a year later, McCarty fought him, and people suggested that Lemieux turtled, but McCarty just pounded him anyway. And it's very famous in Detroit, Colorado lore. When they did a documentary on it recently and all that. Well, when that was all going on and they were observing the anniversary of that, Lemieux came to Detroit and actually did a set down with Darren McCarty. They promoted it, and he ended up talking about it, and he discussed why he did the way he did. McCarty, although he still doesn't respect what went on and says so publicly, he says, and I've done a book with him, so I know that he actually likes Lemieux as a person.
Did Lemieux ever apologize? He never apologized.
He did not. He did not apologize to Chris Draper. And as Darren said, I wasn't looking for an apology. Darren McCarty said that. But He did not. But they've done events together, and Darren told me the first time they did an event together, it was a $10,000 fee, which probably Darren needed at the time. I mean, anyone who read the book know that he spent all the money that he made in the NHL. He had a lot of abuse issues, and Claude Lemieux probably didn't need the money, but he did the event with Darren and then donated all of his money to charity. In terms of they were just signing, photos of the fight. And imagine, I mean, why would Claude want to sign a picture of him, lying on the ice? But he did. And, I don't know his motivation. I've never spoken to him, but did he want to help Darren McCarty? Did he, it's a possibility, so I can't imagine why else. I mean, he actually had to come to Detroit to do this.
Yeah.
But he raised $10,000 for someone's charity. But I've heard some people who are represented by Claude saying he does a good job. So I don't know one way or the other.
Did you ever speak to him much when he was playing?
I did all the time. Yeah.
Good person.
Yeah.
Good person. You spoke to him?
I had no difficulty with him. He was completely, like a lot of tough guys. It's like Tom Wilson. We were just talking about Tom Wilson got married, and I was with people, and they said, did you know Tom Wilson? Have you talked to him? Yeah, I have talked to him. And I said, very likable guy. His behavior on the ice, you're going, oh, come on. Are we here again?
But that's the case. Like Dave Brown, who Ranger fans just dislike totally, and we understand why. He cross-checked Thomas Sansom in the face, and that he's obviously done some other things. He's one of the nicest guys on the planet. He's a real sweetheart of a guy, actually. Clark Gillies. I mean, he wasn't dirty, but as tough as anybody out there. Fantastic guy. Yeah.
Stu Grimson. Stu Grimson's a lawyer. Stu Grimson's a lawyer. He's had more than. I wrote his book too. Like County Juniors, I think he's fought more than 500 times. Stu Grimson. Wow. Yeah, for more than 500 times. Right. But a really nice guy, really intelligent, caring guy, cares about people and about the doing it right and being honorable and all that kind of stuff. Tells a great story about when he just got called up and had to fight Bob Probert. He and his wife were in a dinner after the game, late dinner, and Bob and his teammates strolled in. This was back in the days when they didn't fly immediately after the game. They waited till the next morning. They were on a road trip, and he saw Bob coming right at him. And he was thinking, oh, my gosh, he's a rookie, Grimson was. Am I going to have to fight him in the restaurant? Because they had fought during the game. And he said Bob Probert walked over, extended his hand, and said, pretty good scrap, Stewie. Pretty good scrap.
Nice.
Yeah. And he said he realized right then that it was a fraternity that, look, they were combative and competitive and all that. But, when it was over, they cared about the guy. And
I know. It's amazing like that in the hockey world. I told people the story, how your reaction when I said, well, Bob Nice knocked me out and put me in the hospital, but man, I respect him a lot. And that's just the way my thought process is. And you're like, hold on, let's think about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I mean, probably in the moment, you weren't feeling like that.
No.
But when when you thought about it, and Stu Grimson talks about, he ended up getting the best of the Dave Brown in his first pro fight. And then when it was time for a rematch, Stu ended up in the hospital.
Yeah, I know.
And actually, and it was a pretty dramatic moment in the book. That's when he knew he could play in the NHL, because what he thought to himself as he was laying in the hospitals, if I can survive what I just went through, I can actually do this. Because he said it can't get worse. Can't get worse than what Dave Brown just did to me. Because he fractured his jaw, and he was in the hospital for a couple of days, and it was just a mess. And that kind of told him, I can have a career. I can have a career in the NHL because I just took the best anybody could or worst anybody could give me, and I survived it. So
imagine fighting some guy like John Scott, the size of him, right? Or Derek Beauregard, those kind of guys. Even who's the tough guy that played Montreal, the black guy, Brashear. Oh,
yeah.
Man,
I'll tell you, people tell me, and he's a former Ranger as well as being a Red Wing, Joey Kosher was among the scariest people that you could fight because of he just didn't quit.
Yeah.
And you don't want to fight a guy who has no quit in him. Like
Right.
you were never. It was never going to reach the point where you're going to put him down. He was going to keep coming at you.
Oh, and he
Um,
hurt people. He hurt people with that right hand too. Like that's the thing. You're watching his fights.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I
And
mean,
the other guy,
go ahead.
Tony Twist, was
Tony
another
Twist.
guy. Yeah, I
George
have.
LaRock is another guy too. Jay brought him up here. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I'm not sure George was underrated because he's always listed by almost all the tough guys. As Stu Grimson writes about George LaRock in his book as well.
There's a great video of him playing a game in Edmonton, I believe it was, and he lined up beside somebody. I think it was the Phoenix Coyotes, or he was with Phoenix. I can't remember what the story was. He's very like a gentleman, like he's having a conversation. He's mic'd up during the game, and he goes to the guy. He says, "We're going to go," and obviously the other guy said yes. He said, "Okay, good luck." Be really calm and polite. And then the whistle blows, they drop the gloves and go beat the crap out of each other. It was pretty fun.
Well, the Darren McCarty tells us a good story about Tony Twist. He fought Tony Twist, and McCarty, even though he has a heavyweight reputation, was really a light heavyweight. Like he really had no business fighting with those 230, 40-pound guys. He was 180 pounds.
Yeah.
And he was tough, but he just wasn't a heavyweight. Kind of like Kelly Chase within that category too. But anyway, he ended up fighting Twist, and he held his own, did well, and he said, I might have got a punch or two in too, and he knew that Twist was going to fight him, wanted to fight him again, and so he was lined up to him, and he goes, I really didn't want to fight him, but I thought I was going to have to. And he goes, all of a sudden, I see Scotty Bowman on the bench, and he stands up on the bench and said, Darren, if you fight Twist again, he says, you're not going to play for the next 10 games. And he said, I looked at Twist and said, nothing I can do. And he said, I went back to the bench, and I said, thanks, Scotty. And he goes, you're welcome. So
that's pretty good. You told that one before. That was a good story. I like that. That's pretty smart. How many other coaches would think to do that, right? That's pretty smart.
Well, yeah, Scotty, he was on top of everything, and he always had. I remember the one time when he thought that the ESPN cameras were hanging too low, and his team liked to use that, what they call the soft dump, where you hit like a 9-iron wedge up high and you get it out of the zone, but it doesn't go far enough for an icing. You've all seen that play, and they had a couple of guys, particularly Larry Murphy, who was very good at that. And Scotty says, those cameras are too low. Those cameras are too low. You got to get these guys in there. Those cameras, it's going to hit that camera at a crucial point in the game. And lo and behold, they came and they looked at them, and they were low, and they moved them. Scotty just watching at the morning skate, So
I'm thinking of another story. A Barry Beck story is pretty funny. We were playing a preseason game. Ted Sater was coaching us, and we were playing Philadelphia at the Garden, and it's late in the game, and a bunch of stuff was happening, and Paul Holmgren was on the ice. Barry was on the ice as well. And Ted Sater puts me out there at left wing. He wanted me to go out there and fight Paul Holmgren. And Barry Beck was funny. He was standing right there. Holmgren's there. I'm right beside him, and Barry's right next to me. We're getting ready for the face-off. And Barry says to me, he says, what the heck are you doing out here? Like, he knew what was going on. I think he was trying to save me from having to fight Holmgren. And I said, well, I think that idiot Sater wants me to fight this big guy right beside me here. And Paul Holmgren was dying laughing because we were having this conversation, and nothing ever ended up happening. But it's funny.
Yeah, I love the stories when guys too talk about, whenever there's a fight breaks out, you got to find a partner, and the lengths that players will go to get a favorable partner. Situations. And guys, of course, are always willing to discuss it. After they retire and stuff, you're like, I always look for the smallest guy,
totally,
that kind of thing. So, just didn't want to get involved in it.
And especially once you play in the league for a while, the guys are getting traded all the time, so you get to know a lot of guys. And so, remember, we were playing against Calgary. It was in LA, and brawl was going on, and Brian McClellan, this general manager of Washington, he's a big man. He's pretty tough too. We lined up against each other, and we were buddies. We played together and everything like that. And he said, what do you say? He says, it smells like booze around here. Like we'd gone out drinking together before. So obviously we were going to get a fight. So he's pretty funny. He's actually really funny, man.
I think Brian McClellan is probably the most underrated general manager in the NHL.
Oh, do you? Okay. Yeah.
I think he is really good, and yet you don't. I think he does a great job. I think he's really good at the trade deadline of assessing. He reminds me actually of his approach like Lou Lamoriello. Like for a lot of years, Lamoriello, no one was better than Lamoriello. He'd start assessing his team in December, and then he'd start making moves to plug the deficiencies that he thought he had. And he was very good at that in the 1990s when his team was always competitive, because we always used to say things. It sounds stupid when you say it. Like if they can get into the playoffs, they can win the cup.
Right.
Because that's, he just, he was just really good at figuring out what they needed in order to be competitive. But, sometimes the roster didn't start out as strongly as it needed to be. So, and McClellan does that. And I just think he manages his cap well. He's courageous in his boldness. Like, he basically said last trade deadline, I don't like my goaltending. It's not good enough. That's why I'm not going to, be all that aggressive. And then he proved that he certainly wasn't fibbing when, he traded his two goaltenders this offseason.
And he let Barry Trotz walk away after winning the Stanley Cup there too. You want a GM who has conviction in his opinions, and McClellan does. And I just like the way he handles things. He's got a complete new set of goalkeepers, he ended up with the Stanley Cup winning goaltender from last year. So he certainly have upgraded, and he gave away younger goaltenders like certainly Samsonov, who's now in Toronto. I mean, he was really highly coveted for 2 or 3 seasons, and now all of a sudden, he's kind of starting over too. He gets a fresh start in Toronto. I was told, it wasn't by Brian McClellan, I was told this, but I was told by somebody else that I think really knew what was going on. Even when he went in to interview for the job as general manager after George McPhee had gotten fired, apparently he went into the owner, and I don't know exactly how he worded it, but he said to him, basically, listen, you're not a good owner right now. I guess the owner was getting way too involved, talking with players and all this different kinds of stuff. And he said to him, again, obviously he said it in a nice way, but he says, here's what you need to stop doing. Here's what you need to do. And I don't know if that was part of the reason he got hired or not, but I thought I really hadn't heard that before, where a GM that's looking, or somebody that's looking to be the general manager, kind of critiques the owner a little bit, but it's pretty smart.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about this quite a lot, and it is very important. It's one thing to manage your team when you're GM, but you also have to know how to manage up. You got to manage your owner. You got to know how to deal with it. And that's important stuff. That's one of your former roommate's strengths. He knows how to manage up. He knows how to work with ownership, no matter what kind he has. He's, a lot of people see Tom Dundon as really aggressive, but I bet Don Waddell has few problems with ownership. He just knows how to do it.
And he's getting results there too now, right? So he's got to put together a real good hockey team there too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, we've run out of time, but we do appreciate you listening to us on Labor Day. I hope everyone has a great day. If you want to read me, I'm still writing at Detroit Hockey Now and also hockeybuzz.com.
And I'll be back at 11:30 with our buddy Mark Puttenvink, talk a little fitness. And if you'd like to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you Wednesday.